Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. With me today is a very special guest, Chancellor Dr. J. Perman, the Chancellor of the University Systems of Maryland. Dr. Perman, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Senator, it's my honor. Good to be with you.
Thank you. We have so much to cover. I like starting with your personal and background, and but then we're gonna zoom through to what you're doing now. So you got your BA and your medical degree at Northwestern. You were a professional professor and chairman in Pediatrics Department at the University of Maryland. You went to Kentucky for a little bit, took a wrong turn. Thank goodness we got you back to Maryland, and since 2020, you have been chancellor after being president of the University of Maryland at Baltimore. Talk about your trajectory, why you got into medicine, and then why you made the shift to higher ed.
Well, thank you for that question. You know, students often come and ask me, did you always know you wanted to be the chancellor? And the answer is, of course not. I had made up my mind really at the age of 5, like many physicians do, that I was going to be a doctor. And I was very fortunate, got a lot of help along the way. And as you indicated, I became an MD. During my early years of training, I began to be very fascinated by little babies at the time who wound up in the hospital for months and months because they had intractable GI symptoms. Very frankly, they
gastrointestinal GI,
chronic vomiting, chronic diarrhea, and nobody knew what was wrong with them. So certainly nobody knew how to treat them. And I decided that I wanted to be a gastroenterologist for babies and children. Well, there was no such thing at the time. I was in Chicago, and I found my way to Boston, Massachusetts, where I learned to do that in a very rudimentary way. All of that is to say to you that my trajectory was academics, yes, university, but academic medicine, because since it was such a new field, I felt I needed to make my contribution to research, to teaching, so that we could understand these children better and to treat them better. And I grew up, Senator, in the academy in academic medicine. Here's what I learned. I learned in taking care of families and children that my job was the easy job. Now, that sounds terribly arrogant. What I mean by that is that, yes, I learned how to make the right diagnosis, prescribe the proper therapy. But families came to me, and probably many, many physicians like me, with all kinds of other issues. Often they had insufficient funds. They had insufficient understanding of healthcare and what they needed to do. They didn't have proper transportation, even to get to the doctor. They couldn't understand how all the medications needed to be given and how they worked. They didn't have enough food. You know what I'm getting at.
Yes.
These are things that are called the social determinants of health.
Yes.
And it became clear to me that the way to fix all of that was to make sure that children, I took care of children, got the opportunity to have an education. That's the way to fix the social determinants of health. So I was fortunate. I got a chance to do it on a larger scale. That's what I'm doing in education.
So thank you for that. That's amazing. Again, I have a million questions. You became chancellor in 2020, and what else happened in 2020? Oh yeah, the beginning of COVID. So how did that go? How was your onboarding? How were those early months, and frankly, the first couple of years? How did you address all that?
Well, let me put a fine point on that by even being clearer about the calendar. I became the chancellor in January of 2020. If you and your audience recalls, we weren't talking about COVID.
Right.
Just 2 months before it all hit us.
Right.
So if I may, I do get a kick out of the compliments that go to my bosses, the Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland.
Putting a
You
doctor.
should hear how they're complimented. God, how brilliant that was. You got a physician. That was dumb luck for all of us. And again, I don't want to appear to inflate myself. I am not an infectious disease specialist. So in many ways, I was a lay person too. But yes, I had an understanding of the principles, the issues, the language that was used, and by virtue of being a physician, perhaps my opinions carried a little more weight.
Yeah.
We in Maryland did very well in terms of how we operated our higher university system.
Mm-hmm.
We got through it. And the point I want to make is that we got through it because we were a system. All of the leaders of the individual institutions were able to share with each other. We were able to help each other with regard to testing, with regard to policy.
Yes.
So I think we did well. Now, we suffered from the enrollment impacts that everybody else suffered with across the country. But happily, the students are coming back.
Yes. So it occurs to me that not everyone watching this knows about the University System of Maryland and what that encompasses. And you were talking about, so why don't you just do the 2-second thing on the number of campuses, the number of students globally, and the variety?
Yeah, well, you said it just right. We are 12 universities. Mm-hmm. And I like to say that Maryland has public higher education. It's America in miniature. We have an extraordinary flagship at our campus, the University of Maryland in College Park. We have a great academic, health, and social services campus in Baltimore. And then we have great regional comprehensives, some of them in non-urban Maryland. We have extraordinary HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, which are much in demand these days. We have a completely online university that many of your viewers see advertised on the television, University of Maryland Global Campus. We have everything. And that's very important. We also have 3 regional higher education centers.
So I had to ask, I wanted to make sure we talked about USG, the universities at Shady Grove, which kind of the best of everything right here in Montgomery County.
Well, again, you said it very well. In Montgomery County at USG, which is the granddaddy of our regional higher education centers, 9 of our universities get together to provide offerings, and not just one-offs. They find ways to work together as well. So you almost get an enriched experience. You get a little bit of everything if you want it at Shady Grove.
Yes. And you're the overseer of all things. It occurs to me, and I really this wasn't on my list of questions. My very first year in the House of Delegates, 1995, and still one of my very favorite bills was one sentence. And I called it tuition equity, because I was a grad student in College Park and I wanted to take a class at USG closer to home, save the commute, and there was a $300 surcharge. And how is it that the same class with the same professor, the same syllabus, was $300 more? And so I had a 1-sentence bill that just said tuition and fees shall be equal. And the Board of Regents changed the policies and made sure that that was the case.
Well, that was a very effective bill.
I withdrew the bill. They did budget language.
I see.
They withheld $1 million. Former state treasurer, who was then in the House of Delegates, Nancy Kopp, was like, "Are you kidding me? Forget it." And so with $1 million on the line, they saw the light. Anyway, that wasn't
you and Nancy Kopp help us to this day. Even though Nancy is retired, she still helps us with one of our advisory boards.
She's wonderful.
Yes,
what a shero she is to me. Yeah. So what do you like best about your job as chancellor, and what are your biggest challenges?
Well, plain and simple, the thing I like best about my job is the privilege of interacting with students. I have a very optimistic view of the future. we are going to be in very good hands. Our students are not only bright, they care about things. They are good citizens. And, you know, as I get a little older, those people keep me young. So that's the best part of my job. What are we worried about? We talk about our students. We're so privileged to have them, about 165,000 of them this year across the state. It's not enough. And the way I mean that is there are still too many students left out. There are too many young people who don't live in a college-going culture. Not everybody needs to go to college, but everybody should have the opportunity because talent is abundant. So what keeps them? I think we could all do a better job inspiring them, getting them college ready, making sure once they get to college, they succeed. And we could all do a better job of making college affordable or helping folks.
That is exactly where I was going to go next. So tuition rates for out-of-state students have gone up almost 50% between 2013 and 2023. How are you thinking about keeping college affordable for out-of-state students?
Well, first of all, I ought to claim some progress for us. Thanks to all of you, our electeds. We understand that college needs to be affordable. In the early 2000s, about 15 years ago, we were in the first 5 in the nation among states in the costliness of public college education in Maryland. Now, we're in the middle of the pack.
Nice.
We're 25th or 26th, and that is because we keep our tuition increases for in-staters to 2% or less. And we do that. Look, we got the same pressures, the inflation pressures, et cetera. We got the same thing to serve the the students food. We've got the same grocery store effect that everybody has. Sure. So the way we do that is because the taxpayer helps us to subsidize. And we try to provide as much in the way of assistance as possible. 50% of our students graduate with no debt. What we've got to work on is the other 50%.
Dang. All right. As someone who had student loan debt, I absolutely spent the first 20 years of my career, you know, trying to pay it off. So speaking of debt and speaking of planning, financial planning, the 529 college savings plan, which became such a mess last year. Got to give a shout out to State Treasurer Derek Davis and his team for helping to figure that out and make it work for families this year and then going forward. Will you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, we too are grateful to the treasurer for rescuing this. It was an unfortunate episode. And I think we've got that straightened out so that people that are investing long-term to put their children through college can feel secure. The other thing I want to point out, and again, this is with the help of the legislature. The legislature approved us to take a portion of our endowment. This is money that people give to us for specific purposes. We can't pass out that money any way we want. The donor tells us what to do with it, but we get income on that money. So the legislature just last year, with leadership of your colleague, our Senator Nancy King, leading the charge, we were able to take a portion of that endowment and segregate it, about $150 million of it, so that the income off that endowment can be used for scholarships. And we hope to particularly target those scholarship dollars to a very fragile segment of our population here in Maryland. It's especially those students who don't qualify for Pell Grants, for federal government grants, but they're just above that level.
Right.
And it's hard to afford college.
So let's talk about, we're talking about economic diversity, but there's also linguistic, and gender and sexual orientation and ethnic diversity. Now, the Supreme Court just had their ruling on affirmative action. You made a statement. How is it that the University Systems of Maryland is going to stay diverse and make sure that that we're also in compliance with what this Supreme Court has indicated?
So I'm glad you brought that issue up because it's weighed on us heavily. I need to say first that, as with many other things, we're lucky to live in Maryland. Yes. From this perspective. And the reason we're lucky to live in Maryland is Maryland itself is diverse. So the good news for us is that our system is pretty diverse. About 39% of our students are underrepresented minorities. Having said that, it'll sound like, oh, no problem. It is a problem. It is a problem, and we have an answer for that, which is not prohibited by the Supreme Court ruling. We pay a lot of attention to pathways. In other words, we have many areas of our state where, again, as I referred to earlier, there are a lot of children that ought to have the opportunity to go to college. Mm-hmm. And we are spending a great deal of our time focused on the following. You know, higher ed, going to college, you know what higher education has related to with K to 12, we've usually told K to 12, hey, here's what you need to teach in order to meet our qualifications. Right. And then if your students are good enough, maybe we'll let them in. Right. We got to change that. We've got to go the other way. We've got to help our K to 12 educators, the teachers, the systems, to get students ready for college, into college, and succeed in college. So we're working very hard on that interface. And if we do that well, we'll take care of our diversity commitment.
Good. Great answer. You have walked through the path of some pretty giant educators with Dr. Toll, Dr. Langenberg, and of course,
Dr. Kerwin.
I'm about to say the amazing Dr. Britt Kerwin. So I want to mention him in particular because I think he's just extraordinary. And the Kerwin Commission, as it was called, is the blueprint for Maryland's future. So when you talk about kindergarten through 12th grade, public schools, and the 10-year blueprint, what is it that you're hoping it will deliver to you in terms of students more prepared for college, readier to learn and to flourish?
Well, what Britt Kerwin led in drafting the blueprint is essential to us, of course. And our part in this, there's a whole piece in terms of the 5 pillars there that relates to teachers. And we make the majority of the teachers in Maryland. And
you have to keep them in Maryland, though. We can't train them and then have them teach out of state. We want them to stay and teach in Maryland.
Well, that's a whole other subject. And look, frankly, and I'm sure you agree with me, Senator, and your audience agrees, we need to pay our teachers more. That's part of the blueprint. We need to respect them more, if I may say it. They need to be honored among us. And until we get that straight, all of our plans are not going to quite make it. So that's something we all need to commit to. Having said that, we need to prepare more teachers, and we need to prepare teachers for the time better. I'm convening with Britt Kerwin, Ike Leggett, who chairs the Accountability Board, names that are obviously familiar to all of you. We're convening the education deans, not only from our own system, but all of the education deans, so we can strategize on how to attract people to the teaching profession, make them ready. I want to make one fine point here that's terribly important. We need more African-American teachers, and particularly more African-American male teachers.
Yep.
And I applaud the initiative at Bowie State and a number of our other institutions to do just that.
Great. So at the time of this taping, we just got news just a few days ago that the superintendent of the Maryland State Department of Education is not choosing to ask for a second term. And we've had some challenges at MSDE. So I'm wondering if you had a magic wand, or without a magic wand, just as chancellor, what do you hope to see in Mr. Chowdhury's successor?
Well, I am no K-12 educator myself. So without being prescriptive, I have one great hope that is essential to doing everything we just talked about. We need in his successor a partner.
Yes, amen. And we need in his successor a partner. That was one of the challenges.
This is all about partnership.
Yep. He's a smart guy, but not so great at collaboration. But okay, well, let's move on from that to something pretty different, actually. Talk about technology and social media in terms of through the lens of your own use of technology and social media, and then how important it is for students and the campuses.
Well, you know, as it relates to me, I'm fairly primitive. My handle is at J. Perman, my Twitter handle. So I would hardly hold myself out to you to be an extraordinary user of social media. Having said that, it's terribly important in higher education, as is technology. You asked about the pandemic a few minutes ago. Think about all of the pivoting we needed to do. And now we're all comfortable with remote learning, with online learning. We know how to use it, even though one can make no mistake about what the students want. They want face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
So we've got to offer hybrid. We've got to offer remote when appropriate. You know, I talked about the students earlier as if they were all, if you will, fresh-faced 18-year-olds coming to campus. We have many of those. But what we used to call the non-traditional learner,
Yes.
the person from 25 to 44 who's got a family, a couple of jobs, and can't come to campus Monday to Friday when we operate, they've got to be served by technology.
Yes.
And then finally, with regard to technology, we're spending a lot of time talking about AI, its use and
Artificial intelligence.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Its use and
It's misuse.
Yes. Yes.
And we're going to get that right. You know, we said at the top of the program that I'm a physician. I get it. You know what? We've done all this electronic medical records, and I'm sure everybody on the call here has had the experience of the physician today looking at her computer rather than looking at the family and the patient. And now with AI, I see the hope that I can go back to looking at the person I ought to be looking to,
Nice.
and my note that is necessary will get written.
Nice.
And so forth and so on.
I have just a few more questions before we start to wrap up. The Institute for Health Computing is a pet project of yours. Why don't you tell us what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, so I am so pleased about this. Comes from your neck of the woods. Will be in your neck of the woods in Montgomery County with Montgomery County support and legislative support. It's the dream child of leadership at the University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Baltimore, and our third partner, the University of Maryland Medical System. So just within the boundaries of our medical system, we have records of 2 million people. Now, privacy for sure. But you know, when you take the data from 2 million people and let the computer crunch them, you learn things about patterns and approaches that you can't see yourself. That's what the Institute for Health Computing is. It will allow us to provide better care, develop new treatments, new approaches to people by, as they say, crunching the data from all kinds of people who we've had the privilege to serve. And it'll be right there in Bethesda.
And the time frame?
They are already about, with necessary approvals, to sign a lease for space. And extraordinary new hires have come from distinguished places like Harvard and Penn to stand this up with our professors at College Park in Baltimore.
That's great. That's great. Congratulations in advance.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Yeah. Birth control and abortion. Talk about how the campus is going to be stepping up to make sure that in pro-choice Maryland, where we are guaranteeing women's reproductive choice, that students from other campuses, other states, not other campuses, other states, also are getting information and care.
Well, I would simply affirm that. They are going to get the care and referrals that they need.
Thank you. And another kind of icky question here, which is anti-Semitism is everywhere and it's on campuses. We are just starting the new year, the Jewish New Year of 5784, and there has been a spike in Maryland and around the country. What are you doing on campus to make sure that any incidents are addressed and that there is education to address the ignorance?
Well, the way I started to approach this important matter is as follows. Once a month, Senator, I invite students from all the campuses, 2 from each, to my house or virtually for Sunday brunch.
Nice.
We call it Chancellor's Chat. Not terribly imaginative, but that's what it is.
That's great.
And I have been very deliberate in recent months. I've had a chancellor's chat with Jewish students, Jewish leaders, and rabbis from the Jewish organizations on the campuses. I've done the same thing with the Muslim students.
Right.
And basically, I've asked them something that's increasingly becoming a term in higher education: belonging. How do you feel? Feel comfortable? Now, I'm not sanguine about this, don't get the wrong idea, but I got very good reports, which is a credit. It's not a credit to me, it's a credit to the constituencies of our institutions. That said, we are very vigilant about it. I know where the Board of Regents stand, and I would simply say, and I've said it, we're not going to tolerate.
And let me just be clear. While I asked about anti-Semitism, that also goes for racism, homophobia, xenophobia, any of the hate or exclusion is just totally inappropriate.
That's the point of my chats. What's going on?
I love that. I love that. Well, Chancellor Dr. Perman, it is time for our Fast Five. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers to help us wrap up. Question number 1, I'm shifting to personal, which is you have 4 kids and 9 grandkids. Question number 1, what do you like best about being a grandpa?
Well, I like their company. I said that the students make me feel young. You can imagine how my grandchildren feel.
Awesome. Question 2, tell us about your best family vacation. Where was it and what was special about it?
You know, I would say back to California. I started my career at the University of California, San Francisco. I'm very happy I ultimately found my way to Maryland, where I've been for most of the last 40 years. But I do like going back to that part of the country, and we do that often. So it's multiple vacations.
Lovely. You have a stressful job. Question number 3, what's a hobby, something you do to relax?
I like to walk on a beach.
Nice, nice.
As far as I can get myself and hear that whoosh of the water and the waves.
And you got to use sunscreen, skin cancer.
I have a daughter who's a dermatologist. You know how much I hear that?
Perfect. And you're a doctor, but I got to say it for the viewers because yeah, you don't have to be fair skin or bake for hours to end up with little things on your body. So question number 4, what's the best book or play that you've enjoyed recently?
Hamilton.
Okay. Where'd you see it?
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it at the Hippodrome.
Yeah.
I've seen it in New York. I'll see it some more and some more. I get something out of it every single time.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Did you ever see 1776?
No.
Okay. I'm giving you that as an assignment. It's kind of
Okay.
a precursor and it's fabulous. It's not rap, but it's a musical and it's just,
Sounds good.
it's fantastic. Um, Question number 5, the one I ask all of my guests. Chancellor Dr. J. Perman, what is your hidden secret superpower? What's a skill or talent you have, something most folks can't do, that you're really great at?
I think it's listening. Listening doesn't mean you agree with everything you hear, but it makes such a difference to you and to the person that's coming to talk with you if you listen with energy.
Love it. That's so important and a skill that a lot of us could probably work to improve.
We could all do better.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Perman, Mr. Chancellor, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all that you do. And thank you for taking the time to kibitz this morning.
What a pleasure it's been for me. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. See you soon, I hope.